En vandag is die dag van die professors hier op die Groot Ontbyt. Ons het vroeër gepraat met die professor daar die Kaap uit en dit was die voorsitter van die National Science and Technology Forum, maar hulle het hulle awards gehad en nou het ons een van die wenners hier, so professor Dave Berger. Is it Berger of Berger?
Berger.
Berger. Yeah. It's 'n Afrikaans and English professor. So ons gaan so tussen die tale hop. Dit gaan baie lekker wees. First of all, you are a winner of what award?
It is the Special Award for 2016 in Crop Science and Food Security of the National Science and Technology Forum.
So it's a special award. And then before we get to the award, more about what you did to get the award, just a little bit of background of yourself.
So as far as background goes, I was actually born in Nairobi, Kenya, where I grew up. And when I was 10 years old, we moved to the Eastern Cape. And then I did my studies at the University of Cape Town. En dis waar ek my vrou ontmoet het. Sy is Afrikaans. En vir oorlewing moes ek leer om behoorlik Afrikaans te praat. Maar ek is eintlik 'n soutie, so ek sal sommer aangaan met Engels.
Ek moet sê vir oorlewing, ek kan nogals dit dink. Afrikaner boervrou. So the project that for what you received they received the award for. What project was that? What are you working on?
So to give you a bit of background, it's in the context of food security, and the United Nations declared in 2014 that a set of sustainable development goals, and one of them is zero hunger by 2030. And so my work is orientated towards reaching that goal. So I call myself a gene detective. Okay. And so what we do in our research is we try to find genes from plants which can improve crops in agriculture. And essentially, you can look for genes for drought tolerance, to improve yield, and to make the food more nutritious. But also, my speciality is disease resistance in crops.
Which is a big problem.
Yes.
En nou, ek het al gesien met die melkboere ook. Ek het by die funksie gewerk. And you buy like the milk cows with a certain genome they call it, a genome. And it's such an wetenskaplike industrie geword, landbou. Is it the same with crops? People think you just put maize in the ground and there you go.
No, we've done in our particular research. We have to work in a research team of students at the University of Pretoria and industry partners to actually find these genes and develop new lines using this laboratory techniques. And actually, the reason that we've get such good yields, especially in maize, for example, in South Africa, is because the genetics is so good of what a lot of the farmers are putting in the ground.
Is there certain, let's say, diseases that disappeared because of what you're doing? Wat vroeër jare 'n probleem was, sê maar in die 80s, 'n sekere siekte wat mielies kry, nou is dit heeltemal uitgewis soos pokke by mense of wat ook al.
Exactly. The research by many people around the country has helped to reduce the effect of a lot of diseases. In my particular work, we're working on a disease called grey leaf spot of maize, which is also known to the farmers as grys blaarvlek. Okay. And that is a big problem which actually only came into South Africa in about the 1980s. And because of various environmental conditions and farming practices, it's become a bigger problem, and that's why we're focusing on it. But through our research, we've actually been able to find some genetic markers for resistance in some wild maize varieties. And we've developed these markers which are being used for improved maize in South Africa. And we've actually even patented some of these markers internationally because this is a problem around the world.
Is daar sekere, wat is ons hoofdisease? Was mens soets kan hê, as ek nou besluit ek wil nou in crops ingaan, maize, maybe just certain crops and certain diseases that's very common.
This grys blaarvlek is a big problem in KwaZulu-Natal and Eastern Cape. And there's also a lot of diseases of cob rot diseases of maize, which is very important. But diseases is like in human diseases, they come and go. And so you have to be vigilant the whole time and actually have people who know about all the different types of diseases, so that if a disease comes up in a particular season, you can try to attack it.
If you look at studies done in South Africa and you compare it to international studies, are we on the right track? Is there a growth in terms of studies?
Certainly in plant pathology studies looking at diseases, for example, the University of Pretoria, I'm part of an institute called the Forestry and Agricultural Biotechnology Institute, and we've got about 150 postgraduate students working on diseases mostly of forestry crops, but also crop diseases. And the quality of work we're doing there is on a par with international standards. For example, next week I'm traveling to the US, where I'll be presenting some of our latest research at an international conference there.
Wow.
En ons het so vinnig gepraat en dit is meer gefokus prof op die gene genetiese nie manipulering kom is dit manipulering, is that the right word? Not really.
Not really, no.
It's
using
better,
genetic information to breed better crops.
Okay.
Ja.
So net vir agtergrond en ouens besef dit nou nie, ek dink landbou is massief. I want to talk about the year of the pulses, but before that, did you enjoy and excel in science and technology engineering at school yourself?
You know, I grew up in Kenya, and so we were always in nature, out in nature, so I was really into biology and science. But, you know, to be successful in science, you don't have to be a nerd like in the Big Bang Theory. You know, it requires a lot of different skills, you know, creativity, leadership, you know, and many research leaders like at the University of Pretoria, I've got some colleagues who run groups of about 30 different people researching specific topics. So it's actually a field which is open to a lot of different people with different skills.
And if you could tell yourself, you know, give yourself advice, take you back, you're 10 years old, what will you tell yourself?
I would tell myself to keep on asking questions, be inquisitive, you know, study nature, look at nature from the micro to the macro, and also, you know, do experiments, you know, it was simple experiments, and that's lots of fun, and enter these annual Science Expo competitions every year.
How do you, with your research, so you into the research, you're sitting in a university, you're a scientist, and then you invent new stuff or you realize this is going to help agriculture. How do you get it from the university to the farmer? Is that through corporate companies like, let's say, BASF or whatever? Or how do you get it to the agricultural world?
Yes, we're really encouraged that all the research we do has to make South Africa locally relevant and internationally competitive. And so in my research, we actively seek out partners in industry. And so in this maize project, we're actually working very closely with one of the big seed companies in the country.
Okay.
And that's really good for getting the product out into the market. But it also is very good for the students because they actually get to work with industry partners. And it gives them good skills for their work further in future.
I did some work for the University of the Free State, and I could see that, I mean, there's a lot of agricultural students. I was surprised. And a lot of young black students as well. You know, there's still geweldig belang. Is it the same where you're at the University of Pretoria, that you can see that young people are really interested in the scientific and agricultural part?
I think what pulls the students into the kind of program that I'm working on is just the really exciting field of genetic research, which you can do in plants, you can do it in the medical field. And we're really in a biological revolution because we're generating all this genetic data. And so the combination of computer science and biology is absolutely critical, and it's a very exciting field of the future. And so students are being pulled to that. A lot of them are very interested in agriculture. There are good jobs out there in agriculture, but we need to do more. We need to encourage the young people to stay interested in agriculture, study plant sciences, and not always think that they've got to go to the big cities.
But like you said, you're going to America now to a conference there and sharing what South Africans are doing here. What's your hope for South African science technology? I mean, that's already going further than just the university. Yeah.
Certainly, in the short term, I think what we need to do this year specifically, because it's the International Year of the Pulses, which are these edible seeds like lentils and chickpeas. The United Nations is actually wanting the world to invest about $100 million into pulse research. And so in South Africa, I'm hoping that the government and other organizations come to the party and they actually invest in this particular crop, which is a really healthy food, and encourage the research in that area. But I think in general, in the long term, we need to invest more money in South Africa in research and development in agriculture and capacity building, because we need to be able to feed our population in 2030 and reach this goal of zero hunger.
Ja, sure. The UN call it now this year the year of the pulses. En is my baie interessant en ons het nou uiteindelik op die Afrikaans gekom, peelplante. Is ek reg?
Peelgewasse. Ja.
Peelgewasse.
Ja,
Ek wil weer
ja.
die verkeerde woord. Maar
Ja.
peelplant klink so mooi. Peelgewasse en dit is nou edible seeds.
Yes.
Maar dit is ook baie goed vir die grond.
So it's really an important group of plants which are being promoted now internationally because because they're nitrogen fixers, they actually take nitrogen out of the air and convert it into nitrogen compounds, and so farmers don't have to apply fertilizers, and so that actually enriches the soil. So in the future, we want to see more of these pulses being grown around the world, especially in South Africa, because they're healthy for the soil, but they're also healthy to eat. They're high in fiber, very high in protein, so they're actually a very good alternative to meat. And so all of us eat already lentils and chickpeas and those kind of things, but I think we're going to see them being promoted more.
En dit is baie interessant, ons het nou baie gepraat oor die genetika van die sade en dis maize seed en ek het 'n fout gemaak gesê the maize industry is worth 900 million per year. It's the maize seed industry. En dit is baie interessant dat ouens groei mielies net vir die sade. Dis nie net wat nou gaan vir brood en goed nie. Goed soos pepper juice, it was kind of a South African invention. If you can call it an invention, it's not like an inventor inventing this thing. Are we going to see new plants like that or new edible plants like that?
I think what we're definitely going to see, our diets change all the time, and we're actually going to see improved varieties of food where we have more nutrition maybe in the food, more healthy varieties of the current food that we have. For example, in maize, they're working on developing a maize with increased vitamin A, beta carotene. And so the seed is actually going to be orange. But that's very important for health. The vitamin A. So I think we're going to be seeing new improved varieties, but also new crops coming in. I'm working on a project on a plant called amaranthus, which is the maroch.
It was a wild thing.
Exactly, it's a wild thing, but they're trying to promote that and domesticate it so that it can be grown better for food production.
Sure. En die ander ding wat ek afgekom het jare terug was tomatoes. That was like a tomato, but it didn't really, took off in South Africa. And it was a whole farm was doing this tomatoes, and it was a brown tomato. It was sweeter than a red tomato. So is daar enige crops wat sal verdwyn or not really? Disappearing.
Yes, I think with global warming and the pressure, the changing environment, the agricultural sector in South Africa has to be nimble. They have to adapt to the different conditions. So what we might see is actually some of these traditional cereals like millet being grown more, millet and sorghum being grown more in South Africa because some of the current crops we have can't handle the very dry conditions.
Ek dink as baie kinders wat gaan maak broccoli verdwyn, mamma. Niks broccoli. En broccoli is so lekker. Professor Dave, congratulations again on your award. Thank you for the work you're doing, and dis ek dink ons almal se visie moet wees om werklik te kyk of ons to kill hunger, especially in Africa. Baie dankie vir die tyd.
Baie dankie.